Hi everybody, Stanley with funukuleleprojects. I have a really neat project here, and I actually alluded to this project in the Fender modified Fender giveaway video. This was the project that I told a friend of mine. He was concerned it'd be too expensive. It would be more expensive than the instrument is worth to fix. But having heard the story, I told him, let me do that as a video. And because I think there's some good lessons in that. And I want to emphasize, I don't normally repair things for free. Yet this particular instrument was sold to my friend as B stock, and it should never have been sold as B stock. And the story behind it was, to me, so important in terms of the lessons in it for people like my viewers that are going to try to buy B stock from a company, that I said, here, let me fix it. It was a challenge, but it's the second instrument of his that I fixed that, he'd taken the other one and this one to multiple luthiers who said that neither of them could be fixed. The first one, I alluded to that in the past in another video when I was explaining about zero frets in the plastic ukuleles series. That instrument is a Leilani. There's a beautiful story behind it. I won't take the time to tell the whole story because that isn't the focus of this video. But the problem was that it would never tune properly. You could tune up the strings, but then it wouldn't play right. And people would just tell him, oh no, there's something wrong with the scale. It can't be fixed. And this is one of my little pet peeves with a lot of people when you go to places. A lot of luthiers, a lot of guitar repair shops that will also work on ukulele don't really respect ukulele as an instrument, or just good as something that's cheap or it's not worth their time, and so they don't want to work on it. I told my friend, listen, whatever's wrong with that other instrument, I can fix it, because even if I had to replace the neck, I could fix it, and it has such a beautiful romantic story behind it that I wanted to get it to work. And that took a little while to figure out, but that was the one, like in another video I mentioned, the solution was a zero fret, because after I measured everything out, the problem with that soprano, that little Leilani soprano, was that from fret 1 all the way down the fretboard, the spacing was perfect soprano spacing. But if you measure from perfect soprano spacing for that set distance, sopranos can have different distances, but in this case, I won't go into all those details, that would be a whole nother video. The Reader's Digest version on that story was that the distance from the nut to the first fret was concert length, not soprano length. And so everything else was soprano length. And so as a result, if you tune the open strings, it'll be fine, but the second you fret something, it didn't tune right. It didn't, the chords wouldn't be right, but if you played barred chords, it would be okay. So it was a very simple fix. I just needed to measure what the scale needed to be, and I installed a zero fret. Now it's a wonderful playing instrument. This instrument had a totally different story. It was sold to my friend as B stock. He took it, as I said, to multiple luthiers. And one of them explained to him that it can't be fixed because the soundboard goes in, and the neck bows up, and they're in the wrong directions, and you'll never be able to get everything to line up. Took it to another one, said something similar, and he put what I call the Great Wall of China saddle on it. It was like really tall saddle, and that was his fix. And it played, but that much, a super tall saddle eventually is just going to pull the front of the bridge apart. So I told him, let me take it home, and I'm going to check it. First thing I'm going to do is rehydrate it and see if I can get the soundboard to raise itself back up. And I told him that's going to take a few weeks. I'm not going to rush it. I'm just going to see how it responds and see if it does respond. I'd rather not force it back up. I'd rather let it go up naturally as far as it will. I already had a good idea what was wrong with it just by looking at it, but I wanted to wait until everything was in place. It did raise up. Once it was high enough, I made a custom center brace because this instrument didn't have one, and it really needed one, with tenor strings on a little soprano body. I mean, a soprano can get away without a center brace, but the extra load of these strings on this little body and this thin top needed a brace. Now, it's not a true center brace that goes all the way back, but it's a little wider. It's made out of a sturdy, I use bobinga actually, it's very strong, and it's pressed fit between the bridge plate and the sound, the sound hole brace right here. So it's actually very, very good pressed fit, and it's glued in, it's clamped in place, and that will hold the center of the soundboard up and straight. Once it was in place, once I had, not that, but once the soundboard was raised, then I could do some measurements. And what I suspected was really the case. There is bow, but it's not, and there's a little bit of twist, but it's not enough to affect the playability of this instrument. The problem is it was mismanufactured. This should never have been sold as B stock. This should have been sold as for parts not working. And the reason for that is this particular ukulele has a really tall fretboard. And you notice, yeah, it has an equally tall bridge, only because this bridge has a 4mm riser block underneath it. I created a riser block for the bridge. I didn't want to make a new bridge because the grain of this bridge goes with this really wild grain. It's the mahogany grain that's on this instrument, and it's a really wild grain actually for a neck. It's just so quirky looking, and everything worked together. So I made a riser block out of bobinga. I didn't have any rosewood the right size. Bobinga is very hard, and that raised the bridge to the proper height for such a tall saddle. And then, not tall saddle, the bridge to the proper height for such a tall fretboard. And then I could just put a normal saddle on it. Now the strings, yeah, they're high up here, but that's fine because it just helps with the sound. It has a 2.5mm high action at the 12th fret. It's very responsive. There's no buzzing up and down the fretboard from frets, because actually the bow actually helps, and that little twist is not a problem whatsoever. And that's something that I want to mention. A little bit of twist isn't a problem if you're not getting buzz anywhere. A little bit of bow isn't a problem if it's not so high that it's raising the strings too high. That wasn't the issue with this instrument. The issue with this instrument, was once again, it had gotten way too dehydrated, it sunk in too far. But the biggest issue was that this was a very tall fretboard that Ohana installed on this, and they installed a bridge for a very thin fretboard. There's no way in the world that even if this soundboard was perfectly flat, that this instrument would have ever played. Which brings me to the whole subject of why I decided I wanted to repair this and share a video about it. Be really careful when buying B stock, because you got to be sure it's actually B stock and you're getting it from someone that's reputable. I know that U-Space will get B stock instruments, but they're very picky. Jason and Patrice are extremely picky about the B stock that they get. They look over everything. And then after they get their B stock, they bring it to me, and then I do touch-ups to make it look like A stock. They still sell it as B stock, but I'll actually, a lot of times the B stock is just like, there'll be a little, Ohana likes to put, they didn't on this one, but a lot of their instruments have like a yellow clear coat, a yellow tinted coat, and sometimes they'll use yellow stain under something, but some of it will show up. I will touch those up and make them disappear, or just some tiny little flaw like that, and it's B stock. That's fine, that's B stock. Even if it's there, it's still B stock, but they try to sell as nice an instrument as possible. Even if it's a B stock instrument, they still want it to look as nice as possible, and so I'll do these little touch-ups. And that's really nice. That's one of the neat things about working with a really good local store. This was a mismanufactured instrument sold to someone he's got a heart of gold, he's very trusting, and bought it, and only to find out that it wasn't a B stock. This should have been a for parts or repair only sale. So what are the things that you can do if you're going to buy a B-stock instrument to find out? First off, if you don't have someone in your area that can work on instruments, if you don't feel comfortable doing different things like that, just get an A-stock product. If you have a local store and they're selling something as B-stock, if you go to a ukulele festival and they're selling something as B-stock, what you want to look at is some of these basic things. Like, once again, this is a very tall fretboard. This bridge was really, really short, and it was really noticeable when everything was the right height that this bridge was too small for that fretboard. Look down the fretboard. Even with new instruments, you're doing this. I hope you are. Look down, see if everything lines up, see if it's twisted. And once again, if you like the instrument and it's got a slight twist and it plays really well, with a new instrument, I'd probably still return it. But if it's B-stock and it's playing okay and you like it and you're getting a good discount on it, then I may not, I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. Look at the joints. Make sure that they're not loose, and make sure that they don't look like really off color. Sometimes that's because the glue might be failing, the joint might be failing, the finish may have cracked because there might be some movement there. Ask them why it's B-stock. Now, Ohana's really good about it, and this one actually didn't. Yeah, it says right there. It's right inside there. Ohana will label their stock. They'll put a B on it. But ask them why it's B. Ask the people that are actually selling it. Do you know why it's B-stock? And see if they know. Because that would be a good indicator that maybe there's something more wrong with the instrument. As I said, this had more wrong with it. This should not have been B-stock. There shouldn't even have a B in there, actually, from Ohana. But these are the kinds of things that you can do when you're getting an instrument to see, so that you don't get taken. You might get something and think, oh, that's a great deal. Then you get it home and it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't a great deal. That's not an easy fix. I tend to win the auctions I bid on because I do the opposite. I look for the instruments that are so beat up and nobody wants to bid on them. And those are the ones I get because I really like to give them their life back. This instrument here, wonderful sound. It's a really nice player. It's quirky looking. Even the twist and everything. I could sit there and take the fretboard off, put carbon fiber rods in it, but why? When it plays, and it plays really well. One of the reasons I play Sweet Hour Prayer is it's one of the only things. Well, first off, as I mentioned before, it's my little chord melody arrangement, but I can play it somewhat upside down. So let me see if I can do that here. I like using that because of the melodic nature of the tune, and also, especially upside down, when I'm testing a right-handed instrument, I love getting to this point here. You would be surprised how many expensive instruments I cannot get a nice sound. I really have to work it to get the notes when I'm playing it upside down and just using my finger. Get the right. This instrument does it effortlessly. I'll play scales up and down the neck. I'm not going to do that now. Upside down, that's a bit of a pain. I really like when I get an instrument, I really want, as I said in my previous video, one of my previous videos, I really want to hear the notes all being similar, volume. I like to hear it going up and down the neck when I'm playing scales in all 5 positions. Do they have a nice sound? Is the volume staying pretty even up the neck and all this sort of stuff? This instrument does all of that. It's quirky looking, it's a player, it has a wonderful story to it. This instrument has been to Paris and been played at the Eiffel Tower. And so it's just got a neat story to it. So I just wanted to make it a properly working instrument, not an instrument that has a saddle that is like, the saddle was like a full centimeter tall. It was crazy. It looked ridiculous. And so now actually this will suit my friend for years. And I hope that this gives some help, that this video gives some help what to look for when you're getting a B-stock instrument. You know, once again, look at these things. Is the saddle the right? Does it fit? Are the strings okay? Does it actually play well? A B-stock instrument should ideally just have some cosmetic issues, not structural issues that are causing it to be B-stock. And then, you know, cosmetic issues, they're easier to live with. You're getting a discount on an instrument and it plays great. If you're buying it as a player, chances are it's going to get nicks and scratches and whatnot. The B-stock just has a few oddities, you know, to help it along that path. Anyway, this is the one I was talking about earlier. We affectionately call it the giraffe because of its really long neck. And this is even a little more like a giraffe because it tends to lean forward as it's looking up. Have a wonderful day if you're watching us during the day. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you in the next video.